We're going to look at Amos chapter 1 verse 2 as we follow on from our last message that we had. And he said, "The Lord roars from Zion and utters his voice from Jerusalem. The pastures of the shepherds mourn and the top of Carmel withers." In the first message I gave, I introduced you to Amos and where he is from. We also read that the main way that God speaks to him is through seeing. These visions and pictures that God gives Amos then become the basis of his prophecies. With some of the other prophets like Jeremiah and Ezekiel, we are told that the word of the Lord came to the prophet. The prophet then proclaims the word that has been given to him. As we look at this second verse, it is clear who is speaking. This is not Baal or Ashtaroth or Moloch or one of the many gods worshipped at that time, even by God's people. Sadly, often the people of Judah and Israel would continue to worship Yahweh, but they would mix their worship of Yahweh with the worship of other gods. Even today, we will find Christians claiming worship of Jesus Christ and yet still indulging in astrology, fortune-telling, traditional religious beliefs and the like. Sometimes in Western culture, it is more subtle, and whilst the worship of other gods may not be so obvious, nonetheless, Christians often trust in their wealth, in their education, their real estate or their status as much or even more than the Father in heaven. Amos lets his listeners know that he is speaking on behalf of Yahweh. The God of Israel could not be represented by an image or an idol. Even his name, which represents his nature and who he is not the sort of name that can contain him. In biblical times, it was believed that if you knew the name of a demon or a god, it gave you some sort of power over that demon or god. But when Yahweh first revealed himself to Moses and responded to Moses' request in Exodus chapter 3 verse 15 for a name to communicate to the enslaved Israelite people, which God had sent him to save them, God tells Moses not so much a name, but more like a riddle. He says, "I am who I am," or "I will be who I will be." And this, of course, is the literal meaning of the word Yahweh. Now, we have groups like the Jehovah's Witnesses who show their confusion when they insist that God wants people to know his name, Jehovah, which of course is just another way of translating Yahweh, and that he'll be upset if we don't call him by his name. They are treating God's name with the same understanding as the pagans of Amos's time, and as if we're dealing with local gods and demons and not the God who refuses to be confined by some name that humans might want to use to sum him up with. The God that we believe in and that Amos represents is a God who is what he is and who will be what he will be. He is a God who must always be beyond human understanding. Of course, in Jesus Christ, we can at least grasp something of who the God we worship truly is. And you'll remember in John chapter 14, verse 9, when Jesus responds to Philip's request to show him the Father, Jesus says to him, "Have I been with you so long and you still do not know me, Philip? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'?" In Old Testament times, this Yahweh, this God, could only be known through his actions, his word, his law, his revelation, his presence, all of which revealed something of who he is and what his character is like. Amos, in his introductory word, lets God's people know that this Yahweh is roaring from Zion and uttering his voice from Jerusalem. As Jesus made plain to the Samaritan woman in John 4, verse 14, 4 verse 22, "You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews." Amos is also making it clear to the people of the northern kingdom that the God who is speaking has revealed himself uniquely to Israel, and that his presence is also uniquely located in the Ark of the Covenant in the temple in Jerusalem. Further to this, Yahweh is not speaking as some deity that can be controlled by human beings. He is roaring like a lion, and the word that God is speaking through Amos is not a word of comfort, but a word of judgment. As we will read, initially it is a word to some of the surrounding nations. But then Amos continues on to bring a word firstly to the people of Judah and then secondly to the people of Israel. This word of judgment will leave shepherds mourning over the drying up of the pasture lands for their sheep and even the withering of Mount Carmel. As Gary Smith explains, the thundering voice of God will not bring rain and blessing, but the curse of drought and disaster, signs of his punishment. God, not the Canaanite fertility god Baal, controls the land. His curse will affect even the forested hills of Mount Carmel in Israel and the pasture lands of their shepherds. What does a shepherd like Amos think when there is no grass for his sheep? When the grass is gone and the vineyards and trees of Carmel turn brown for lack of water, one must ask why. Is this not the hand of God? Is God not trying to say something to us? Here in Kenya, we've been asking Christians the same sorts of questions, including their pastors and leaders. And when we hear of the constant inability of people to pay rent, pay school fees, feed their families and find work, is this word from Amos not also a word for the people of God here? Whilst I will not explore further this question now, it will become evident as to the reasons why many Christians are experiencing the things they are experiencing, and they are similar to God's judgment on his people in that time. As 1 Peter 4 verse 17 says, "For it is time for judgment to begin at the household of God. And if it begins with us, what will be the outcome for those who do not obey the gospel of God? And if the righteous is scarcely saved, what will become of the ungodly and the sinner?"